Welcome to my series on off-trail hiking part 2. When you know which terrain is and which terrain is not suited for off-trail hiking, it's really easy to take that into consideration when you're planning a trip. So I have some example trips for you to make it obvious when you will and when you will not opt to go parts of your route or the whole route off-trail. Examples from my own experience, and we're starting with a super simple one just to set a baseline. This is Dalby Söderskog National Park. It's tiny and it is deciduous primeval forest, which is super weird because it's smack bang in the middle of cultural landscape. This means that these paths here don't serve any other purpose than to enable you to see the national park. And why are you there? To see the national park. So that's a great match for starters. Then, if you would want to not hike on these paths, but go here, for example, that's going to be a terrible hiking experience. Hiking here, completely doable. But imagine that you're 4 meters to the left and hiking the same direction. Completely undoable. So this is why when you're making your route, everything that goes through forested areas, especially the hike-ins and the hike-outs of mountain areas, try to find a trail on your map. If you hike on the paths, you can see the whole thing in just an hour, and you will have a great hiking experience and have less mosquitoes and more fun. So here, there's only one rational thing to do. You hike on trail. Second example is also very simple. You are used to hiking on trails and you want to build your confidence by connecting an off-trail section between two trails. If I would connect these two trails, I would say yes, that's a pretty good idea. I wouldn't do it over here because then I would have to traverse this slope. These are the elevation lines. And that's a pain in the butt, and it would be difficult to find this trail, to connect to this trail. But I would wait until I was here at the lowest point between these two and then connect it here. And I'll have to say that these last 60 meters elevation loss are going to be pretty awful because you're in tree terrain. It's relatively steep and relatively wet, but it's completely doable. Sometimes I do this to myself. You're on the mountains and I'm thinking, oh, I'll just get down here on the left side. And in theory it seems a nice plan. But then when you go down, you first pass the tree line of the birches and you're in the bird zone, okay. And then all of a sudden spruces start to appear and it's also steep. And like now I have hopelessly got myself stuck in a steep, wet forest with marshes and tree trunks and etc. everywhere. There's also moose here and they can be aggressive. So yeah, I just want to get down. Third example, this is something that I hope to do next month and then a couple of weeks. This is the little mountain, very recognizable in the field, I hope, of Noorvas. And from this mountain, my hope is to find the start of a river that I want to paddle down in that direction. But to get to this mountain, I need to hike a lot of pathless terrain. And I will be coming from the town of Kautokeino in North Norway, because this is where a bus connection goes. Now my route choices are rather limited, but the first part is interesting. The bus will drop me off here, and by and large I need to go in that direction. So it seems super logical to first take this road, but it's a car road. Cars can drive here, maybe not much, but some will. So you would think to yourself, nah, couldn't I do the first part off-road? Now, I would not do that over here. As you can see, we are below tree level, as you can see from the color green over here. These are marshes, these are lakes, and the layout of this land is directional, like this. You can see that from this river, and the way the lakes lay out here in the land. So if you want to cross it like that, you're working against the grain of the country. And you would have to hike up through the soggy valley, go up again through the soggy valley again, and it's a pain. Back down again, through the soggy valley. Oh, I have to go back up again, bushwhacking. Back down again, soggy valley. Also, you would hit this long lake that you can't cross unless I blow up my boat. So you would still have to go around it. So what I am going to do on this very first day of my very long trip is take this guaranteed successful and quick route to go here, and from there I will take trails and eventually off-trail sections. So then the car road ends here, and I still have to go roughly in that direction. And as you can see, there is a trail that goes in that direction. Question, should I take it or not? Well, why is the trail here? I think it's here to give you a convenient hiking solution to get to this lake where people fish. That's just my guess. I think that's why the trail is here. And as you can see, it smartly follows the higher elevation area. It avoids the most soggy places, and it follows, it doesn't twist a lot. It follows the most direct route. If I would map out an off-trail route from here to that lake, I would take exactly the same route. So will I follow this trail? Yes, of course I will. I could be a dumbass and decide to hike 1 kilometer south of the trail that way, and that's just going to be a little harder, and I'm not going to see anything that I wouldn't see if I were on this trail. Also, this is not a sad trail with cars on it. It's a quad trail. The path stops here, but we're still moving on, crossing valleys, crossing a mountain range, until finally Nuorvas. There are no paths here, so I cannot choose to hike this section on trail, but I can still choose to avoid this section altogether and take a completely different route. Because the question remains, even if there is no path here, is it still a smart plan to hike this off trail? Well, I would say yes, but it really helps if you have some experience under your belt. Elevation gains don't look so terrible because the lowest part of the valley is 400 meters above sea level, and the highest mountains are only 484 meters above sea level, so that's not too bad. But the relative flatness of the terrain does mean that you have a lot of wet areas. So you need some serious shoes to hike here. Also, I think that this terrain could be very tough. Either very swampy or very stony. Something else that you have to think about is that orientation here is not going to be very easy. There's no trail, there are no landmarks. The only thing on a very large scale that you have that gives you excellent orientation is the river valleys, because there are quite a lot of those, and they are all about 15 kilometers, so say 1 day hiking apart from each other. And you can add to this the fact that there is no cell reception here. If you need saving, and you might need saving in terrain like this,
it's going to take them quite a lot of time to get to you, and you need to be able to tell them where you are, which is hard. What I am bringing is, of course, a satellite beacon. And then there is the matter of how fast do you think you can go. I think that this, for instance, could be a relatively fast section.
Makkelijk wandelterrein. Doet me denken aan Schotland.
If you would want to hike here, you're in trouble. That's terrible. And crossing the river valley, I would always do that in a straight down, straight up fashion. Is just going to be a bit of a nightmare.
Kijk eens wat lief. Kavelbruer heet het in het Zweeds. En ze zijn er helemaal niet om ons te beschermen van het moeras, maar om het moeras te beschermen van ons. Dus blijkbaar is dit een kwetsbaar moeras. Of ja, ik weet het niet. Terwijl, ik ben al door 100 moerassen gelopen, die hebben we allemaal gesloopt. In conclusion, when you're planning a trip and you plan on going off trail, probably you will hike the first part of your trip on trail. Then there comes a moment when you're in open terrain like tundra or like a desert, and you can do an off-trail section there. And then the last bit is likely going to be on trail again to connect back to your car, the trailhead, train station, etc. If your trip is going to be predominantly below tree line, on trail hiking is the way to go.